Hello, thanks for dropping by. My name's Elijah Gloffenheim. I felt the need to make this video to clarify some things in a much longer video I made, which I will call a documentary, which was designed to be played on the projector at Sunset Gap in the auditorium for the July 4th celebration, though I will add that it was also played on the 1st and 3rd of July as well. I will first talk about the people in the documentary, then I will clarify a few things in the documentary, which is the main reason for this video, and then I will show you some deleted scenes. In the documentary, I have everyone arranged in order of last name alphabetically. However, in this video, I will tell them to you in the order that I interviewed them. The first interview was with Betty Williams, filmed on April 23rd of this year, 2024. I chose her to be first primarily out of convenience. First, she's my grandmother. She doesn't live far away. I figured that she would be good practice for me to work out the bugs in my interviewing system. There was just one thing I didn't consider when I began. The fact that she's had 2 strokes. It made things a little difficult. You will specifically see how in the deleted scenes section. You may see her use a couple of techniques in the documentary to remember certain things, such as looking down at a piece of paper or assigning certain phrases to different fingers. When watching the documentary, it will be obvious that she has either experience or knowledge in practically every activity that took place there. The second interview was with Verma Dixon, filmed on April 25th. She was born in the year 1918, and if you're watching this video years from now, she was 106 years old when I filmed her this year, again 2024. She is also the primary reason I suggested the interviewees to share their age, though not all of them did. She was an original student when Sunset Gap was a 1st through 8th grade school. I also had a somewhat difficult time interviewing her too, mainly because she has hearing loss. I also had a difficult time editing as well. When I asked her what I would call the philosophical questions, such as your favorite memory, I didn't get very good answers for one reason or another. So I had to bend some of her answers to fit the pattern of the documentary, and I plead editor's liberty as far as that goes, but the majority of the things that she said were in the context of the question. The third interview was with my uncle, Dran Williams, filmed on April 28th. There's little I could add that wouldn't be repeated in the documentary, but I will add this. Before he sat down for the interview, he told me that it couldn't be for too long because he had something to do afterwards. Ironically, he spoke longer than anyone else did, giving me a total of 53 minutes and 27 seconds of unedited footage. But I am not complaining, because he told some good stories. You may hear some background noises during his interview. That would be his wife off camera reading a magazine, waiting patiently for her turn to be filmed. Speaking of which, the fourth interview was with my aunt, Melissa Williams, also on the 28th. Again, there is not much I could add that wouldn't be in the documentary, but I will say this. She is not particularly comfortable being on camera, and I commend her for getting out of her comfort zone for this documentary. The fifth interview was with Laura Breeden, known to almost everyone as Tootie. This, again, was also filmed on April 28th. I conducted 3 interviews in one day. Beginning at the time I asked her how Sunset Gap had affected her the most, both the lighting changed from the window off to the side, and she repositioned herself in her chair. The combination of these two things resulted in a less than desired result compared to earlier clips. I'll take the blame for that. You would be surprised how drastically a person's appearance can change due to the lighting. The sixth interview was with the executive director of Sunset Gap, Audrey Jones, filmed on May the 3rd. I will add that at the time of recording, the pollen was affecting both of us, so if her voice sounds slightly off, it was the pollen. In spite of that, she did well. The seventh interview was with Kay Davis, filmed on May 11th. Up until this point, everyone I had interviewed lived within about 15 minutes of Sunset Gap. However, she lives in Knoxville, and if you're not familiar with this area, it's over an hour's drive from Sunset Gap. During the school section of the documentary, Kay Davis speaks of the founding of Sunset Gap, which is probably the most important section in the whole documentary for the history of Sunset Gap. The eighth interview was with Dan Davis, also filmed on May 11th. The only thing I can think to add would be that he was the easiest of the interviewees to edit. He did not speak so loudly that I had to turn him down, nor did he speak so softly that you couldn't hear him. He also didn't go from one subject to another in the same clip, which made things easier. The ninth and final interview was with Jimmy Prophet, filmed on May 22nd. Aside from being filmed at Sunset Gap, the only interesting detail I could add is that he is a descendant of the people who donated the land for Sunset Gap on the Cocke County side. And now, it's time for the main reason I made this video, to provide clarification on some points in the documentary. At different times in the documentary, you will hear of a building called either the craft house, the dorms, or even a clinic, depending on the context. It was a building on the hill across the road from the main building. Notice I said was, because it was destroyed by a fire in 2012. I thought I would make that clear for viewers who are not familiar with the area that the building is no longer here today. In the international students section, my uncle mentions a summer staffer named John MacArthur. You may have heard of a well-known pastor of the same name. I just wanted to clarify that the John MacArthur mentioned in the documentary is not the well-known pastor. Next, the school on Wilhite Road, before Sunset Gap was built, was called Juniper. However, when my uncle mentions it, he mistakenly calls it Glendale or Glenwood, which was the name of Sunset Gap in the early years before the name was changed. I feel that might confuse some viewers, so whenever my uncle says Glendale or Glenwood, he is actually referring to Juniper. Another point in the school section, my uncle mentioned that there were 3 teachers when my grandfather was there, Miss Cochran, Miss Plummer, and a 3rd teacher whose name he couldn't remember. However, at one point while the documentary was being played on the projector, a lady came up to me and said that she was a descendant of one of the original teachers, whose name was Johnson. I think it's reasonable to jump to the conclusion that Johnson was the name of the 3rd teacher. Yet another point in the school section, Kay Davis said that Sarah Cochran established a tent on the hillside in front of where the smokehouse now is. I don't think she knew, but the smokehouse isn't there anymore, but instead there is a little chapel in roughly the same location. So, if you were to go there today, it would be more accurate to say that she established a tent on the hillside near where the chapel now is. And now, I will correct probably the most obvious discrepancy in the documentary, which was the primary inspiration for this video. In the food pantry section, both my grandmother and her sister said that a man came into the thrift shop and said that he was hungry. However, when my uncle tells of it, he said that it was a lady. He simply misspoke or misremembered the story a little bit. It was a man who came by the thrift shop. As for the final point of clarification, you will hear the term spring lizard mentioned, especially during the funny stories. I feel that spring lizard is a term that many viewers today, as well as years from now, will be unfamiliar with. The term spring lizard is another name for a salamander. Some of you might have heard of Tipper Presley of the website The Blind Pig and the Acorn. She also has a YouTube channel called Celebrating Appalachia. Both the picture you are seeing now and the definition I am about to read are used from her website with permission. I will link both that article and her YouTube channel in the description of this video. She writes, "The name spring lizard is a holdover from the days when folks used a spring house to keep their perishables cold. Lizards could often be seen in the cool, wet interiors where milk and butter were stored." Now it's time for deleted scenes. This first deleted scene is from when Kay Davis was giving her introduction. I cut the clip before she was finished for a few reasons. One reason was to keep a somewhat quick pace at the beginning, and the other was simply because some of the information would have been out of place this early, but you can hear it now. However, I'm still not done with clarification yet. In the following clip, she mentions she had 3 children, but later names 4. The names are Chrissy, Becky, Dan, and Karen. The first 3 are hers, and Karen is Betty's daughter. With that understood, this clip continues right after I cut her off. Enjoy.
We had 3 children, and they all went to Cosby School. Chrissy started in 1st grade that first September that we were there in '65, and Becky was in the preschool that I started, and Betty Williams came to the house on preschool days and stayed with Karen and Dan, my youngest. So that enabled me to be free to teach. And I asked the parents to come work with me and enjoy the children. And Tootie came one day, and I saw her looking out the window and thinking, and she said to me, "Kay, I wasn't looking forward to this. I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I really have had a good time." So we got parents involved when we could and picked up the children and drove them home. We started out 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then as Bob got busier, because he was a driver, we changed it to Tuesday and Thursday. And from then on, it was Tuesday and Thursday.
This deleted scene is from Verma Dixon. I wanted her to talk about when Sarah Cochran would tap the students on the hand with a ruler because I thought it would be funny. And judging by Miss Phyllis from our local church laughing off to the side, I think I was right. Enjoy. Could you please tell about the ruler? I think that'd be funny.
The ruler? Where she used the ruler on your hand?
The what?
Got the ruler. Or did you ever have the ruler after you?
Okay, could you please? Yeah.
They would pop your hand with that, put your hand out and they'd smack you with that ruler. It hurt. Because I didn't get punished because I tried to be good.
This next one is my favorite and probably the funniest. Earlier, I mentioned that my grandmother, Betty Williams, had 2 strokes which made things difficult. Now you will see how. Hardly any introduction is needed, so enjoy.
Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. My son Duran started out as a tenderfoot and foot.
That's all right.
See, sometimes the word, when you try to say 2 words close to one, it winds up with one, and some things I've said terrible things like that. Duran told me one day, he said, "Mommy, that's enough. Don't say that again anymore."
After I cut the camera, she did tell me what she accidentally said that one day. I won't break her trust by telling you, but I will say this. It is an ungodly combination of words which ought not be uttered. Now it's time for the final deleted scene. When I was filming my Aunt Melissa, I had my laptop next to me so that I could read off my list of questions, and I forgot to mute the volume, and it notified me about something which was probably worthless. But at least we can get a laugh out of it now. Enjoy.
The food pantry has very progressed into much of a need and much of a service to the community, which is very nice.
Sorry,
but the
computer may sound I muted now. Could you please repeat that line again?
I don't remember what I said.
Well, just start talking. We'll just start talking about what you think you already said.
Just end it wherever you went.
Well, that's easier said than done. I don't even remember what you were saying either.
See, you're not like Duran. We're not like Duran. He's like a computer.
Well, this one just makes too much noise.
I'll just go on to the programs. I'll finish that. That should be good.
Well, I'll make a cut for the camera. If you go to the end of the food pantry chapter of the documentary, you will see that I cut the volume off while she was still talking to mitigate the damage. And that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.